You know the technicals. You have spent hundreds of hours backtesting your edge. You can recite the rules of market structure and identify a valid setup instantly. Yet, when you look at your trading journal, the profit and loss curve is not the smooth, upward trajectory you envisioned. It is a jagged mess of large wins, sickening reversals, and frustrating break-evens. Why? You have done everything right on paper. You have the map, but you keep getting lost in the execution. This is the unsolvable equation that defines the intermediate stage. You believe consistency is achieved by tightening your grip, by demanding predictability from an inherently random environment. The harder you try to force the outcome, the more you micromanage your stop losses, the more you jump in to recover a loss, the more you try to hit that monthly percentage target, the more chaotic your results become. This is the consistency trap. You are trying to achieve stillness through violent effort, and the market, being a perfect mirror, simply reflects that internal struggle back to you. The fundamental mistake is confusing the inputs you can control with the outputs you cannot. You can control your behavior. You can control when you enter a trade, how much risk you allocate, and whether you honor your predetermined stop loss. These are the inputs. But you cannot, under any circumstance, control the price movement of the next 5 minutes, or whether this specific setup will result in a win or a loss. The profit and loss is a byproduct, an output of executing your process flawlessly over a large sample size. Consistency is not the control of profit. It is the relinquishing of the need for control over profit. And that is where the true enemy lies. It is not market volatility. It is not the sudden news event. Your primary enemy is the internal demand for certainty. It is the ego's insistence that because you did the work, you deserve the reward right now. This need for certainty forces you to interfere, to violate your rules, to chase the moving target. It makes you a victim of the very unpredictability you fear. You are standing at the edge of the market, trying to control an ocean with a teaspoon. And until you put the teaspoon down, until you consciously surrender the illusion that you can predict or force the next outcome, you will drown in the noise. We must now turn our attention inward, because if the market is chaos, the only thing we can truly stabilize is the mind that observes it. The stabilization of the mind begins when you recognize the primary mental illness that plagues almost every intermediate trader. The tyranny of the trade-by-trade mentality. You are obsessed with the individual outcome. You look at every single entry and exit as a personal test of your intelligence, believing that this one specific trade, right now, must be maximized. This obsession forces you to treat the market not as a system of probabilities, but as a series of guaranteed individual events that you must master. You are trying to squeeze every last drop of profit from a move that, statistically speaking, only had a 60% chance of working in the first place. This is where the self-sabotage starts, born from a desperate, toxic need for micro-control. What does this look like in practice? It is the classic sequence of self-destruction. You cut your winners too short because the fear of seeing paper profit vanish is greater than the conviction in your system. You snatch the small wins because they validate your decision, even though your system required you to hold for 2 or 3 times the risk. Conversely, you hold your losers too long, paralyzed by the fear of being definitively wrong, hoping that the price will simply return to your entry point and validate your initial decision. You sit there, watching the loss grow, rationalizing every tick against you, telling yourself that the market is just testing you, and the ultimate betrayal of your own plan, moving the stop loss. That small incremental adjustment based purely on hope, not logic. You are literally moving the line of defense while the market is charging, hoping it will pity you. This is not trading. This is emotional negotiation with an indifferent machine. The trade-by-trade focus is purely fueled by ego. The fear of being wrong is the fear of being judged, even if the only judge is yourself. The fear of missing out on potential profit is greed disguised as discipline. You feel personally victimized when a trade moves further after you took your profit, convincing yourself that you somehow failed to extract the maximum value. This is the moment you must pause and reflect on the absolute futility of this mindset. You are treating the market like a personal competition. The market doesn't know your name. It doesn't care if you are right. Trying to force predictability onto the inherently unpredictable is the fastest path to burnout. The mental energy expended, trying to manage every tick, trying to optimize every entry, trying to forecast the next 5 minutes, drains your reserves completely. You finish the trading session exhausted, anxious, and riddled with doubt, having achieved nothing but the confirmation that micromanagement leads to massive emotional swings. Consistency is not the result of being right on every trade. Consistency is the result of applying a proven edge over a large series of trades. You are sacrificing the statistical inevitability of your edge for the fleeting toxic satisfaction of feeling in control right now. You are trying to guarantee the single event, thereby guaranteeing the eventual failure of the entire system. The cost of this pursuit of single trade perfection is anxiety, exhaustion, and eventual self-sabotage. You are spending 90% of your mental capital on 10% of the process. The paradox is this: true control in trading is achieved only when you surrender the need to control the outcome of the individual event. You must shift your focus entirely. Stop asking, "Did I win this trade?" and start asking, "Did I execute my plan flawlessly, regardless of the profit and loss?" This shift is the bridge to the next level. It requires detaching your identity from the outcome. But how do we realistically achieve that level of detachment when our capital is directly on the line? It starts with redefining what success actually means. Detachment sounds simple in theory, but the ego is the gatekeeper. The ego does not tolerate randomness. It does not accept that a perfectly executed setup can result in a loss. Why? Because the ego demands vindication. It sees a loss not as a statistical event, but as an intellectual challenge. When the market moves against your position, you don't just see a decrease in your profit and loss. You experience a direct assault on your identity. That visceral, tightening feeling in your chest is the ego screaming, "Wait, I am smart. I analyze this correctly. The market must be wrong." Losing challenges your self-image as a competent, intelligent individual who understands how the world works. The chart in that moment is telling you, you were wrong, and the human ego, built on the premise of being right, cannot tolerate that verdict. It demands to be validated. This need for validation is the single most destructive force in an intermediate trader's journey. It is the genesis of revenge trading. You rush back into the market, not to recover capital, but to immediately reassert intellectual control over a probabilistic outcome. You overleverage, not because the risk management framework justifies the position size, but because you need immediate, undeniable proof that your initial analysis, your intelligence, was superior. The internal dialogue is toxic. "I know better than the system. The rules are for beginners. This time is different." This is the ego attempting to dominate a purely random process. It is an internal war you cannot win. When the ego is in the driver's seat, execution dies. You have a mechanical system with defined entry and exit criteria. This system is your edge, back-tested over hundreds of hours. But when the trade is live and the ego is seeking maximum validation, it overrides the rules. Your system might specify a take-profit target at a specific resistance level, but the ego whispers, "Don't be a coward. The momentum feels strong. Hold for a bigger score. Prove how brilliant your entry was." You move your stop loss, not because market structure has changed, but because accepting the loss now would mean accepting that you misjudged the situation, a painful blow to the ego. You hold the losing position, praying for a reversal, because the ego cannot handle the shame of being wrong. That mechanical rule, the objective, impartial instruction, is now corrupted by subjective, emotional decision-making driven by the need to maximize the win and prove the initial entry was genius. You are substituting your rules, your only source of long-term consistency, with the fleeting, desperate hope of intellectual vindication. The cost of this psychological corruption is paid directly out of your trading account. You are paying the ego tax. The market doesn't care if you are smart. It only cares if you are disciplined. The need for vindication is the single most costly psychological error because it turns a statistical game into a personal battle you can never win. The chart is an impartial reflection of price, with no feelings to hurt and no ego to appease. The moment you try to prove your intelligence to the chart, you have already lost. Later, I will give you the 3 questions your ego asks that sabotage every consistent day. The battle you are fighting is not against the market. It is against mathematics. You treat every single trade like a final exam, but the professional understands it is merely a data point. Stop judging your system, your intelligence, or your worth based on the outcome of trade number 1, trade number 5, or even trade number 10. These single outcomes are noise. They are random variance. Consistency is not achieved trade by trade. It is an attribute of the system you run, and that system only reveals its true power over a large sample size. This is the mathematics of surrender. You must stop trying to force the outcome of the immediate trade. You cannot. Your job is simply to execute the edge with robotic precision, trade after trade, until the statistical truth manifests. The market does not owe you a win just because your last trade was a loser. In fact, probability dictates that even with a 60% win rate, you will inevitably hit a streak of 5 or 6 consecutive losses. This is not the system failing. This is the system working exactly as designed. If you cannot emotionally accept the inevitability of the losing streak, you have no business taking the next winner. That is the highest form of discipline, accepting the drawdown. Stop trying to negotiate with variance. It does not care about your account balance. It is simply the necessary cost of doing business. The intermediate trader gets angry at trade number 7 when it hits the stop loss because they feel they are due for a winner. This is the gambler's fallacy masquerading as trading strategy. Are you smarter than probability? Are you going to tell the laws of statistics that your 60% edge must manifest right now, in this moment? The answer is no. You are not smarter than math. True confidence does not come from a feeling in your gut or from studying the chart for an extra hour. True confidence is the quiet, stoic certainty that your edge has a positive expectancy over 100 repetitions. Your job is not to predict the next candle. Your job is to ensure you survive the losses required to reach repetition number 100. This is what we mean by surrendering control. You are not surrendering effort or analysis. You are surrendering the need for immediate gratification and the delusion of omniscience. You are accepting that the trade you are currently in is already decided by the forces of the market, and your only remaining choice is how you manage your risk and how you react to the outcome. If you know your edge wins 60% of the time, why do you fight the 40% that loses? Why do you expand your stop-loss or revenge trade when probability is just playing out its necessary role? Are you smarter than probability? The answer is no. You must embrace the losing trade as a required input for the winning system. It is the toll you pay for access to the statistical advantage. The moment you stop personalizing the loss, you begin trading with the deep, quiet confidence of a professional. But this statistical acceptance requires a profound psychological shift. It requires you to tame the beast inside that demands certainty. That beast, your ego, is whispering 3 very specific, highly destructive questions into your ear right now. We need to identify them before they destroy your next 100 trades. That beast demands to know, is this the one? What if I am wrong this time? Should I tighten my stop? These questions are not analysis. They are fear dressed up as risk management. The only way to silence them is through absolute mechanical detachment. This detachment is not indifference to risk. It is indifference to the outcome of the current trade. Your job description as a professional trader is deceptively simple. Execute the plan. Your job is not to manage the profit and loss once the trade is active. Your job is to manage the execution of your predefined strategy. Think of yourself as the trigger finger, not the judge. The moment your entry criteria are met, the moving average crosses, the volume spikes, the support level holds, the decision is already made. There is no debate. There is no second guessing. If the conditions are present, you enter. If they are not, you stand aside. This is the first, most critical act of surrender. You surrender the need to be right, replacing it with the discipline to be systematic. The mechanics of detachment begin the moment you click the button. Before you enter, two things must be fixed, immutable and non-negotiable: the precise location of your stop loss and the calculated size of your position based on that stop loss. This is your insurance policy against your own greed and fear. Once the order is filled, your responsibility shifts entirely. You place the stop loss and the take profit targets, and then you physically step away. This is the set it and forget it mindset, often dismissed by amateurs as lazy, but it is, in fact, the highest form of disciplined control. When you are hovering over the chart, watching every tick, you are not managing risk. You are feeding the addiction to control, and control in the market is an illusion. Every minute you spend staring at the fluctuating profit and loss is a minute spent eroding your mental capital. Your system should already define the exit points. Your job is simply to allow the trade time and space to work, or to fail, statistically. If you intervene, you are not trusting your edge. You are trusting your current, highly emotional feeling. That feeling is the most expensive variable in trading. Mastery is found in the relentless, crushing boredom of repetition. You know you have successfully surrendered control when executing a trade feels like loading the dishwasher. It is a necessary chore, not a thrilling gamble. The market is designed to provide excitement, but the excitement it provides is expensive. It is the dopamine rush of the impulsive action, the panicked reaction, the fear of missing out. When your system is sound, when your risk is fixed, and when your execution is robotic, the emotional landscape flattens. You should feel mildly indifferent when a trade is running. That indifference is the firewall protecting your account. The excitement you crave is precisely the excitement that costs you money. When you can watch a significant portion of your account value fluctuate, up or down, and maintain a heart rate that suggests you are merely watching paint dry, you have achieved the necessary detachment. This is the true sign of mastery. The ability to surrender the outcome allows you to focus solely on the process. But before you can fully embrace this mechanical execution, we must confront the three destructive questions the ego is whispering. Because they are designed to pull you back to the chart, to make you intervene, and to guarantee your inconsistency. We need to dissect exactly what those questions are, and why they prevent 90% of intermediate traders from ever achieving true consistency. We need to dissect exactly what those questions are, and why they prevent 90% of intermediate traders from ever achieving true consistency. But before we can confront those specific psychological traps, we must establish the ground truth that the ego desperately tries to deny. The market is not a sentient being. It is not judging you. It is not trying to take your money specifically. It is a neutral, indifferent mathematical engine. But it possesses one powerful, inescapable function. It is a perfect mirror, a mirror that reflects your internal state directly back to your profit and loss statement. Look at your trading results honestly. If your equity curve is erratic, if your entries are random, if your exits are based on adrenaline or pure hope, then do not blame the market environment. Do not blame the news or the Federal Reserve. The chaos you see in your account is simply the external manifestation of the chaos in your decision-making process. The market does not reward intelligence. It does not reward intricate analysis or clever predictions. It only rewards mechanical patience and unwavering discipline. These are the inputs you can control. Everything else, the price movement, the volatility, the outcome of any single trade, is utterly outside your grasp. If you are constantly trying to intervene, if you move your stop loss, if you adjust your take-profit target based on a sudden feeling, you are demonstrating a profound lack of trust in your own statistical edge. You are trying to force the outcome. Think about a sculptor. The amateur sculptor tries to force the clay into a shape that the material fundamentally resists. They fight the grain. They apply too much pressure, and the entire structure collapses. They are trying to impose their will. The master, however, understands that the material dictates the process. He listens to the clay, guiding it, not forcing it. He surrenders his idea of absolute control to the reality of the medium. The market is your medium. If you are trying to force a huge winner, or trying to force a reversal because you feel you deserve it, you are the amateur sculptor, and your account is the collapsing clay. This surrender requires radical humility, especially when dealing with losses. The intermediate trader takes a loss personally. They treat it as a failure, a judgment on their intelligence, or a sign that the system is broken. But a loss is not a failure. It is simply a necessary data point. It is the cost of doing business. It is the fuel that allows your statistical edge to function over the long term. If you cannot accept a loss without judgment, without immediately trying to adjust, intervene, or revenge trade, then you are blocking the flow of information your system needs. You are telling the market that you refuse to look at the reflection. The moment you try to argue with the price action, the moment you feel that surge of indignation because the trade went against your expectation, you are not arguing with the market. You are arguing with the reflection in the glass. And that is the most fundamental paradox of trading. The only way to achieve consistency, the only way to gain the results you crave, is to completely surrender the illusion of control over the outcome. Now, the ego hates this idea. It needs that feeling of control. And that is why it whispers those three destructive questions. Questions designed to hijack your process and ensure you never truly trust the mirror. Let us look at the first, and perhaps most dangerous question. The ego whispers those questions because it fears this one simple truth. You are not the predictor. You are the executor. The only true power you possess in this high-stakes arena is the power of perfect adherence. Everything else is noise. You have spent years trying to predict where the market is going, agonizing over every candle, every news headline, trying to gain that one extra fractional percentage of certainty. It is time to redefine what winning actually means. Winning is not making money on a single trade. Winning is executing your plan flawlessly, 10 trades in a row, regardless of the individual profit and loss outcome of each one. Did you enter exactly where the mathematics told you to enter? Did you manage risk exactly as prescribed? Did you exit at your predefined take profit or stop loss? If the answer to those process-based questions is yes, you have succeeded, even if the trade lost money. This is the ultimate surrender. When you accept that the outcome of any single event is random, a roll of the dice in a game you know how to play, you stop treating the market as a test of your intelligence and start treating it as a test of your character. You are trying to be the hero, the genius who saw the future. But the truly consistent trader is the machine. They have surrendered the need for ego validation. They understand that their edge is mathematical, not psychological. Your job is not to be smart. Your job is simply to be disciplined. Consistency is not the result of better technical analysis. It is the inevitable byproduct of psychological release. It is the moment you stop fighting the market and start fighting the impulse to deviate. The market does not care how smart you are. It only cares about your capital, and it will take it if you act on emotion. Stop trying to force the trade. Stop trying to control the uncontrollable variables. Your only true control is internal. Your discipline, your patience, your adherence to the system that has already proven its positive expectancy. Surrender the illusion of certainty, and you gain true probabilistic power. This is the ultimate freedom. You are free from the stress of being right. You are free from the emotional devastation of being wrong. To finally achieve consistency, you must first admit that you were never in control. Now, this realization makes those three destructive questions even more potent because they are the final barriers your ego will erect to prevent this necessary surrender. The struggle you are having right now, managing frustration, accepting losses, and finding consistency in chaos, is not new. 2,000 years ago, Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius faced constant warfare, plague, and the pressure of leading an empire. His solution was to turn inward. His private journal, Meditations, is a practical toolkit for the mind, focused entirely on accepting what you cannot change and mastering your own behavior. This 2025 edition, translated by Rowan Ashworth, offers clear, actionable guidance on managing anger and disappointment and finding inner strength. If you want to build the psychological resilience required to master the markets, this is the foundation you need. Order your copy of Meditations today at the link below.